All right, ladies and gentlemen, at Casa de Emanuele with my fellow Italian, yes, my cum, professor of law at Duquesne University, working on his column as he always does in the middle of the week for the Tribune Review. So, Joe, before we talk a little presidential politics and, well, healthcare that just seems to, well, continue to find no answers in America, what would be a cool Italian meal for you growing up in Pittsburgh many years ago?
Well, growing up, it was we were pretty much a spaghetti and meatballs family, which we call comfort food in our house. It's the meal we always went to when things were uncertain, when times were bad. It's the meal I cooked on 9/11 for my daughters. They got home from school all shook up, and the whole world was shook up. So that's pretty much the way we comforted each other. It's an old Italian custom, and we find comfort in soup.
Amen. Nothing like a good pot of sauce. It can go a long way. Okay, this just
Absolutely.
Trending moments ago. CNN is reporting that Mr. Trump and Mr. Putin actually met more than once during the G20. Does that surprise you?
Well, I saw the video. I'm not as alarmed by it as some of the political commentators are. And who knows what they talked about. I guess that's what had some people alarmed. But it was a social dinner, and it's probably good for foreign leaders to get together as much as possible and have as much face time as possible. We may find out more, and we may find reason to be concerned, but right now, on its face, it doesn't look like a big deal.
All right, now we're going to talk about health care in just a moment, but they did by the 8th person at that meeting with Donald Trump Jr., and we do know that he was there. Jared Kushner was there. He, of course, married to Ivanka Trump for just a few minutes. Paul Manafort, Trump's campaign chairman there. Rob Goldstone. This meeting was set up via email, Donald Trump Jr., he being a publicist and journalist, one time a publicist for a Russian rock star who performed at a Miss Universe pageant that Trump hosted in Moscow in 2013. The Russians, of course, the lawyer. You've got a lobbyist who spent time in the Russian military. And that 8th person they've identified, a U.S.-based translator, a U.S. citizen, and obviously you can understand why a translator would be there. So again, we talked on the radio about this last Friday, but when you look at this with your legalese, what do you think are the most significant aspects of this meeting that could actually come back and cause the president and his administration a lot of legal grief?
Well, you have to start with the premise that conspiring with a foreign government to influence an American election is something both morally and legally improper. So if you start there and then you look at the attendees at this meeting, you'd have to be pretty dense not to catch on to what was happening here. There were plenty of Russian operatives at this meeting, and people with even from the American side with a strong relationship, business relationships with Russia, including Jared Kushner and Paul Manafort. So it's I don't think there's any doubt as to what was being attempted here. You can read on its face the emails. There was a promise of damaging information about Hillary Clinton, and Donald Trump Jr. said, "I love it." He was anxious, eager for the meeting. So that's not a surprise. But as I said before when we last spoke, this is the showbiz side of it. You read in the papers, and we're seeing on cable television. The serious part is ongoing, and it's all like a constant hum in the background, and that's the investigation that Robert Mueller is conducting as special counsel, and that's where we'll see whether there's reason for further legal action as a result of this meeting.
Let's move on now to health care. The president tweeting today, because obviously it fell flat. Most Republicans were loyal and terrific and loyal and worked really hard. We were let down, this from the president's tweet earlier today, by all Democrats and a few Republicans. He said they shall return. Mitch McConnell, a repeal-only vote, same legislative language, much more than he said, those 4 no votes. He believes it's more like 8 to 10. You look at Medicaid cuts, higher premiums, helping the rich. All of those meant something, but I keep going back to Medicaid, and I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican. If you're going back to your constituents in your district attempting to get reelected, and all of them, because we are in a very aging population, continue to look at Medicaid cuts, and you're one of the ones responsible for passing this new health care legislation, you're going to have a tough time getting reelected. Do you think it's time they just turn the page and forget about this altogether? Or is it just our president being so stubborn that he won't let them forget it?
I think it's time for us to do what the American people want us to do, and that's work together, Democrats and Republicans, for something that should not be a partisan issue. This has been a partisan issue too long. Now, there are problems with Obamacare, and they must be addressed. But there's some great aspects to Obamacare. There are 30 million more Americans covered by insurance. Personal bankruptcies went down by 50% since Obamacare, which is an indication as to how badly people struggle in order to stay alive or keep their loved ones alive. And while they were losing a few things perhaps that they had acquired during their lifetime. This is not what America should look like. We expect people, we expect our elected representatives, or should expect them, maybe not so much these days, but should expect them to work together. I think it's interesting that 3 women Republican senators came out against this repeal without a replacement, and they sort of brought us all to our senses. That's like a wake-up call for us. They spoke in these terms. One of them, West Virginia Senator Pratte, said that I didn't go to Washington to hurt people, and that's really what was at the core of this repeal and not replace initiative. And I think that those words should get the attention of everybody who's involved in this controversial endeavor. And Democrats and Republicans should come together, because they're not there to hurt people. They're both there to help people.
Hey, on a side note, Friday I'm going to be in for my friend, my hero, Mike Pintek. Absolutely been a fan of his for a very long time. We, of course, at one time hosted a Saturday morning show together. Just love what he does. But I'm going to be joined by the nephew, your friend, I think maybe if not the best, one of the best criminal attorneys in the tri-state, Phil DeLucente, and also Wayne Detalovich, longtime coroner in Beaver County, and he owns a number of funeral homes. We're going to be talking about medical marijuana. I'm a fan of it for a number of reasons, and it's been making news of late, not only in our region, but here in eastern Ohio and the panhandle of West Virginia as well. Across the country, legalized in Nevada and Colorado, recreational marijuana and medical marijuana. But what I'm going to be talking to Phil about is the fact that, a lot of people are concerned about the legal aspect of it. So being that you got a legal mind with that professorship that you have at Duquesne University, and also, you know how things work with lobbyists and politicians. Talk to me about your thoughts when it comes to medical marijuana. And as far as the fear of people, suffering consequences because of it, I got a guy who was a longtime coroner in Beaver County and saw a lot of people die from drug overdoses, and kind of hinted to me that he's leaning in the direction of it as maybe something that can do a lot of good. But we'll talk to Wayne Detalovich and Phil DeLucente, attorney, on the Friday show that is the Mike Pintek Show. But what are your thoughts about it politically and legally, medical marijuana?
Well, politically, it certainly is an issue this time had come. There was a lot of controversy over it at first, a lot of pushback from some powerful members of the state legislature, but I think eventually science prevailed. I'm not a scientist, but there are people whose opinion I trust, like Dr. Bob Cappretto, who was in the news recently speaking in favor of it. And he even told me before his various interviews in media that he had been skeptical, but he took it upon himself to catch up on the latest scientific literature, and he was convinced by that this is a treatment whose time had come. So I would accept my friend Dr. Cappretto's scientific analysis, and from a political perspective, I probably took some courage for some people to vote for it, but it looks again like this is something that's going to help a large number of Americans. Well,
I'll close on this note. The Honorable Councilman Corey O'Connor, a mutual friend of ours, son of the late great Mayor Bob O'Connor, Judy O'Connor, Heidi O'Connor Garth, Father Terry O'Connor, great family. He was on with Robert Mangino last week, and he talked about the dispensaries coming to Squirrel Hill in his district. He said, look, going to have barcodes on it, going to be scrutinized more than ever. I think people need to understand they're going to do their due diligence, and this is going to be something that I think a lot of people, once they see how it's going to unfold, will be like I am, all for it. You're actually not only going to get a prescription from a physician, but when you go to these facilities to pick up your prescription, there will be physicians on hand there doing their due diligence. So they're putting a lot of time and effort into it, and it makes for good conversation. And I'm really looking forward to my conversation Friday with Wayne Detalovich Sr. and attorney Phil DeLucente. Hey, Paisan, ciao. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your night, okay?
Okay, buddy. Great talking with you. Take care now.
Bob Ford coming up next from Casa de Emmanuel, talking about the Open Championship at Royal Birkdale. Stay with us.